the leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. Then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Don't expect us to admit a mistake. We're paying off election debts to those on the take. Attorney General's lying even while
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please? America Off the Rails has been declared a conservatives-only safe zone. Only conservatives allowed from this point forward. Any liberal, socialist, butthurt, hippie, tree huggers, please exit the facility immediately. Again, attention please. America Off the Rails is now designated as a conservative safe zone only. All butthurt, tree hugging, hippie, free to be you and me types exit the facility immediately. Thank you.
Good afternoon, WNJC. This is Rick Robinson. I'm the host of America Off the Rails, and I am joined this afternoon by a regular recurring guest of mine, the author of Commoner Sense, Mr. Patrick Furnari. Now, Patrick, I've had you on here before, but not in this particular way, shape, or form. We've kind of re-edited a couple of your shows here and there that you've done with me, so this will be the first time that you'll actually be with me interacting on WNJC. So I just want to take a moment and say good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Rick. How are you doing?
If I was doing any better, it'd probably be illegal. I'm just saying. And actually, it might be. Who knows? But anyway, so, just kind of going along with the conversations we've had throughout the last few shows, spaced out on the different networks, we're going to kind of give folks an overall taste of that because they may be hearing you at least as a live interaction for pretty much the first time. So just in case we've got folks that have never heard you before, why don't you go ahead and tell folks a little bit about yourself, what it is that you do, and about your book, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Well, basically, I've been out of the country for about 20 years. I've been in construction since the late 70s. I'm a carpenter and amateur stonemason, professional carpenter, amateur stonemason. I made a career out of construction. I went into it as basically a summer job in the late 1970s, and it turned into the endless summer. And I've been out of the country about the last 20 years working on a variety of Caribbean islands, and still live out of the country, but will probably be returning to the States at some point. I'm looking forward to doing that. And while I was down here, I wrote a book called Commoner Sense, The Working Person's Guide to America. And I've gotten a tremendous response to the book, and it's from a working person's point of view. And the feedback from my readers, all I can say is that it was a major effort for me to write the book, Rick, and all I can say is that it was totally worth it.
Having read the book, I would have to agree that it was totally worth it. The great thing about the book, for those of you that might be thinking about picking it up that haven't for the first time, it's one of those books where it's a great read, but it doesn't consume the entirety of your life, because even if you're like me and once you pick up a book, you can't put it down, I had it finished in about 5 hours. But I read fast, so... Patrick.
Okay, I hear you now. You cut out again. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know what that was because I lost you on my end too. I think it's my network again. But welcome to Network Overload. There we go. Are you back?
Yeah, this is really choppy. Is it me? You want me to call back or?
No, I don't. I don't think it was you. I think because of all the stuff that I was kind of doing behind the scenes, I think I overloaded my system a little bit. But that's all right. We're just kind of recording this one so I can kind of clean it all up when we're done. So,
all right.
Let's see. Go ahead and just pick a starting point, and I'll just kind of edit it back together. Uh-oh. I think I lost you again.
Are you there?
Yeah, but for some reason we are cutting in and out really, really badly all of a sudden.
I know. This is a little choppy.
I'm frozen. Oh, wait, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you again.
Okay, I'll just go back into the book then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. One of the things about writing the book that motivated me to write the book, Rick, was that I feel that the average working person's voice has been diminished to a degree where a lot of working Americans feel that they don't have a say in the country anymore. And in the book, I encourage people to vote, to understand how our government is set up, and to assure them that if they do participate their voice will be heard. And hopefully we'll be seeing some results of that in the near future with the upcoming presidential election, because I know a lot of people are dissatisfied with what's going on. And to have your voice heard, you do have to vote.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I actually have one particular friend who actually does a show on my network on one of the other stations that I work for, who basically has recently, as a symbol of protestation, burned his voter registration card. And this guy was already a registered independent in my state, which is basically the closest thing you can get to a libertarian in Oklahoma, because we only have a two-party system. They don't even typically recognize independence, and yet, even though he is actually the sitting chair of the Oklahoma Libertarian Party branch, he's recently burnt his voter registration card, which I don't personally understand, but I guess to each their own. Because to me, it seems if you're not going to participate in the system, you really don't have the right to complain. But he doesn't seem to see it that way. But it's interesting that you bring up the fact that you're wanting to try to get people back to the point where they initiate and use their rights that are basically granted to them to make differences, because there are so many people that don't even think about things like that anymore, because they're too busy basically just trying to get through with their day-to-day lives and make sure there's food on their tables and roofs over their heads and all of the other day-to-day struggles. And we kind of lose track of the importance of being in our government, being involved in our government actually is a very important thing, and it has to happen. Otherwise, we wind up with situations that we find ourselves in now with a president who seems to have no idea what he's doing, and it's a complete mess, to put it bluntly.
Well, our president is an adolescent, and he proves it almost on a daily basis. I have no confidence in him whatsoever. But I do understand the way that some voters or potential voters feel. You make a good point that people get busy with their day-to-day lives and just surviving, so that it's very hard to branch out into thinking, what the heck is the government doing today? But it does affect them. And then there's also another type of person, Rick, that has plenty of food on their table and also decides not to participate in the political process because they figure, well, I've got what I need, what do I care? But I make a point in the book, in Commoner Sense, that, you know, there's a lot of people that have died from our founders on and sacrificed. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this thing we call the United States of America. And for that reason alone, you might want to just stop, take a breath. You'll read in the book a little bit about what happened during our founding and after, and understand that every bit of your American life you owe to the way our Constitution was written and structured. And then on the second point, you also owe a great debt to the people that have fought and do fight to keep you safe and free so that you can live under that Constitution. So I don't want people to take that for granted because, you know, the loss of freedom, as Reagan, you know, famously said, is only, you know, a generation away at any given point in time. It's not a static thing that has just been established for Americans and will go on forever. You have to maintain it, and you have to do that by voting.
You know, it's interesting that you bring up that quote of Reagan's, because there's another guest of mine that I've had on a few times that actually does a show on my network, Dr. Randy Arrington, who has a very similar saying, but from a different perspective, that typically it takes about 2 generations to change the mindset of a group of people. We are now basically in the second full generation of the federal government basically being in charge of basic education. And I think we are seeing a very accelerated, hard shift to the left based on the fact that the federal government has become involved in education. And I don't know if it was intended that way in the beginning, but it seems to have become a way of maintaining control, because we now have an entire group of people that are advocating for more socialist ideals such as cradle-to-grave medical care, social safety nets to the point where once you're in them, you really can't seem to find a way out of them. And it's just one of the things that we keep seeing happening more and more, is it seems like as a society, we are giving up our freedom for just that little bit more of our own personal safety and security. And as someone famous once said, someone who gives up their freedom for a sense of security shall end up with neither. And I think we're starting to see that kind of play out. What do you think?
Well, I have a chapter in the book titled The Progress of the Progressives, and a couple other chapters also that show that this is very intentional, Rick, by the elites, whether they're in the media, government, or academia. And the 60s generation is now running the show. And, the recent activity at the University of Missouri there is a good example of it. They've created Frankenstein's monster. Those are the children of liberal elites, quite wealthy ones, by the way, that have trained those children to be leftist protesters. They don't even know what they're protesting. And they've created Frankenstein's monster, and when Frank gets a little testy and starts ripping people's heads off, all the elites go, gee, what happened? Why are they acting this way? Well, they're acting that way because that's exactly how you've raised them. And the other factor is demographics and immigration. In 1950, we probably had about 1 out of 17 people that were foreign-born, and now we're down to about 1 out of 7. So you have an influx of people that have been listening to this socialist siren song for their entire lives. They might have fled countries that were heavily socialist, and they just look at America as socialist light. It's a little bit akin to a person that moves from California because they don't like big government and heavy taxes, and they move to Texas, and then they vote for big government and heavy taxes. It doesn't make any sense to me, Rick.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I have a lot of friends that live in Texas, and they're talking about how often that actually happens, where folks will flee places like New York and California to get away from heavy taxes and big government and blue policies, just to eventually wind up advocating for big government, heavy taxes, and blue policies once they're in Texas. And it's starting to actually show, because if you look at the map in Texas, in places around the capital, it's starting to turn purple instead of red, which means it's starting to shift more and more towards blue. And it's starting to terrify some of my friends in Texas, so it's interesting that you bring that up, because it's a true statement. And again, I think it has to do with folks' mindsets, because we're used to, whether we want to admit it or not, we're a product of our environments. It's one of the things that keeps being brought up over and over again when we start talking about the Islamic extremists and the terrorists. They are products of their environment. We have an entire group of people that want to wipe us off the map because they've been raised to think that we were evil. And and it's because they're a product of their environment. The same thing plays out every single day when you see, again, folks moving from places like California that eventually wind up bringing the same policies with them that they fled, because, again, we as a species are a product of our environment. And it's just interesting how often that plays out over and over and over again, and nobody really wants to talk about it or even admit that it's the truth.
Well, there's a point in my book, In Commoner Sense, where I refuse to continue to refer to the progressives or the progressive movement as progressives. I start to call them regressives, and I use that word through the rest of the book, and the reason is very simple. They're rooted in the most ancient, failed ideas in history, some that are thousands of years old. And the only true difference in the timeline of history, the only unique thing, the only thing that really matters is the founding of America. It's a truly different thing. That's the true definition of American exceptionalism, not all these other definitions that are thrown around. It's that we are the different thing on that long arc of so-called civilization, of history. And what you're seeing all over the world as far as socialism, the left, or progressivism goes is simply the remnants of the old world. America is the new world, and now the old world seems to be closing in on it to a degree. And we're up for a big challenge and a big test in the very near future, Rick.
Well, I have a question. Are we up for a big challenge or a big test in the near future, or are we already starting to see that test lay itself out? Because I think...
Well, maybe if I was to rephrase that, it would be that we were... you're probably framing it a little bit more accurately than the way that I phrased it. We're about maybe to see the results in the near future of the test that we're currently in. You're probably right about that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I try not to be a pessimist, but with everything that's going on in the world today, I just kind of realize at this point, I hate to say it, but as much as I didn't like what Jeremiah Wright was saying about the time that everybody started talking about the Obama presidency in its infancy and the fact that he spent so much time in that man's church, one of the statements that he said was actually true if you look at it from a certain perspective. When you look at the
I lost you there, Rick.
Oh, are you still there? Can you hear me?
I lost you there. I didn't hear what you said at all.
That's all right. What I was saying was one of the things that nobody really wants to talk about either was, as much as we hate Jeremiah Wright, one of the statements that he said was actually true when he started talking about America's chickens coming home to roost. And if you look at the situations in Missouri, with the recent college safe zones being declared by people of color, the incidents in Ferguson, the incidents in New York with the police brutality situations, and the overreaction in some respects as far as our society to those, I think in a lot of ways the entitlement mentality that is now sweeping the nation is actually causing America's chickens to come home to roost, even if that wasn't necessarily what Jeremiah Wright meant.
Well, I agree. I know I've mentioned that to you before, in relationship to President Obama. But as I said, they have built Frankenstein's monster, and now they're upset because he's terrorizing the village. Well, it takes a village to raise a monster, and the progressives and the liberals have done quite a fine job of it.
There's actually another way you could put that. It takes a village to raise a baby, but it takes a village of idiots to create a monster.
Well, you said it. I didn't, Rick.
I just call him like I see him, because let's face it, if anybody can be credited with creating a lot of this monster, it's the folks in D.C., and as far as I'm concerned, they are almost to the single person, lock, stock, and barrel, a big group of idiots. But hey, that's just me calling it like I see it. What can I say?
So I lost you there again. I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said. You said something about the folks in D.C. The connection went down.
Yeah, the folks in D.C. basically they're the village of idiots that I was referring to that have created the monster.
Well, and we're all suffering for it as the citizens of that village. It's really a shame because the average working person across America is a quite decent person and has a lot of life experience and a lot of common sense. And I don't want them to give up on America, because believe me, the progressives and the liberals are counting on that very person, on wearing them down and having them give up on America. So in the book, I try to be optimistic also, but I will admit to you that at times things don't look very good. But I do have faith in our Constitution and the way that the government was structured and founded by our brave founders. And I hope that does carry the day and carry us through.
And I certainly hope that as well. Well, at this point, folks, we've actually gotten to the point where it is going to be about the bottom of the hour, so we're going to have to take another break here quick in just a minute. When we come back, we'll continue discussing the events of the day right here on WNJC 1360. I am Rick Robinson, host of America Off the Rails. We'll be right back with you here in just a couple minutes.
For our own cause, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political correctness will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom, lest you pray to Jesus Christ. The press is in our pockets cause it's no longer free. You cannot make a move now that the NSA can see. Don't expect equality, respect for fair play. The IRS will target those who vote the wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
For our own cause, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political correctness will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom, lest you pray to Jesus Christ. The press is in our pockets cause it's no longer free. You cannot make a move now that the NSA can see. Don't expect equality, respect for fair play. The IRS will target target the breed. You cannot make a move, no that.
All right, folks, we are back. We are live. This is America Off the Rails. I'm Rick Robinson. I am joined again, still in studio, with my good friend Patrick Fernari, who obviously is not in the studio with me because he's currently in another country, but hey, joys of radio, we can give you an illusion if we want to. All right, so Patrick, before we went to break, I did ask you the question, which is the title of today's show. I want to go ahead and give you a chance to get an answer in on that question while we still have some time left. Lord knows you and I start talking, and the next thing we know, it's been 30 minutes. But so the question for today's show is common sense dead in America? Or not necessarily America, but how about, let's start with D.C. Do you feel like it's pretty much dead and gone in D.C. at this point?
Well, yes. One of the main points in my book is that we are being governed by the elites, and I include the media in that, and the political class. In D.C., the streets are paved with gold by the lobbyists that actually write the bills and then pass them to congressmen, and the congressmen are basically used car salesmen that go out there and try to sell the newest law that one of their big donors has paid for. This is very, very far away from our intended system of governance. In Thomas Paine's Common Sense, his language and his appeal, a series of pamphlets that he wrote, were read in every bar and barnyard and school and church to people sometimes because they did not know how to read them themselves, maybe, was the biggest seller of its time, and he appealed to that very innate common sense that Americans have. But no, it doesn't live in D.C. anymore at all. It's all driven by politics and money and lobbyists and the ideology of we live exclusively in the left spectrum. We're not really operating in the conservative spectrum at all because the center of American politics is continually shifted to the left.
Now, you know, it's interesting that you bring that up because I actually do a show on Saturday mornings with a liberal co-host. It's actually gone through a couple of iterations at this point, and now I have a much younger liberal co-host, and he points out all the time that as this country has progressed, our paradigm has slowly shifted to the left, and he ultimately feels like that at some point his side is going to completely win the argument and basically win the day. I'm not so sure I agree with that because while the pendulum does continually shift, it is much like the pendulum on a clock. Eventually, at some point, it's going to go so far that it's going to have to come back the other direction if we can keep ourselves in between the lines long enough, so to speak, because at this point, I think we're pretty far over to the left-hand shoulder at this point. I think we're about to run ourselves off the road. And this president's behavior reiterates that to me almost on a daily basis. But so we've answered the question of D.C. Now, a bit of a wider brush here, but again in generalities. Do you feel like it's common sense is pretty much dead in America now as well, or do you think it's pretty much confined to D.C., or is it starting to be an issue where the atrophy of common sense is beginning to spread, so to speak?
Well, first of all, I agree with you about the pendulum swing. And I have a lot of confidence in the way that our government was structured by our founders. It's been degraded to a degree. That's another show, the specific things that have kind of degraded the original vision of it. But you're right, the pendulum might swing back, and I'm hoping for that myself. Now, also, the point of the book is that, no, common sense is not dead in America among the average working person. And I use the term commoner. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, and it has a couple meanings that I reveal late in the book, in that it's an English term that was, originally used to kind of define status or rank between a commoner and a person that might have been in the upper echelons of society. And it has nothing to do with America. We've never used that term really. Maybe, obviously, back when we were founded, we might have, but it isn't something we use nowadays. And the other meaning I attribute to it, and this is the really important part, is that the collective common sense of the average working people outweighs the idiocy of D.C. 1,000 to 1. And there's a lot of collective knowledge out there through just life experience and simple common sense that must be tapped into again if we're going to save the country. And I think we're in danger of losing it at times. And it is there. It does exist. And I think that some of the pushback you see against this administration, against the Democrats, and against liberalism in general, is grounded in that common sense. So what I say, the commoner sense, sense that's more common or widely known. And it's something that America has always relied on. And again, that's been degraded along with some of the original focus and intent of the way our government was meant to be structured, at least the way our founders saw it.
Okay. Well, no, I agree with you. There was a specific reason why I asked this question, because I'm going to bring it back around to what we started the show talking about, which was the recent terrorist attacks and the Syrian refugees that the administration and a good portion of the government are basically trying to shove down our throats sideways. I saw a poll today where the majority of the American people are opposed to bringing in the refugees. So my question is, since we've already been able to determine that obviously there's a disconnect between the American common folks and now the ruling class in D.C., because let's face it, at this point we may not think of ourselves as commoners, but that's how D.C. thinks of us. So while your book title was tongue-in-cheek, it may have been a little more prophetic than you wanted to admit. But at the same time, the thing that we need to keep in mind is these people are actually supposed to be the ones that work for us. So when 56% of the American people that are polled are opposed to things like the Syrian refugees and 60-some-odd% are opposed to shutting down Guantanamo, why is it that our elected representatives, the folks that are supposed to work for us, have all of a sudden at some point within the last 60 years become a ruling class that suddenly not only think they know better what we need than we do, but none of us are really willing to do too much about it but sit around and gripe and hem and haw about how we're slowly losing our freedoms while our government slowly takes them away from us. And before anybody starts yelling, screaming, and shouting, no, I'm not saying to break out the guns that you have buried in your basement that nobody knows are there. That's I'm not advocating armed revolt. I'm saying there has to be a happy medium somewhere where we can remember that these idiots that we're sending to D.C. are actually supposed to work for us. So, and back to the original question, because I kind of went all over the map there, but why is it that there can be such a large polling difference between what the American people actually want and what's happening in D.C., and nothing changes for us? I don't understand where we've gone to the point where we don't really hold our representatives accountable anymore when they obviously do not do the things that we tell them they ought to be doing.
Well, first of all, I actually do say in the book that that our government now kind of views us as commoners. And I say, we are formally known as American citizens. And we already have a great title, that of American citizen. But you're right, absolutely right. And I do say that in the book. Our government views us as nothing more than commoners. Now, as far as the disconnect in D.C. goes, that goes back to the lobbyists and the money. And there has been some pushback, though. You have to think about this, that in state senates and governors of states, the Democrats are actually in a lot of political trouble at that level. They've lost a lot of seats over the year, so there is more response to maybe not in the way that you're perceiving it, but there is more political response than you think. But we do a lot of this through the filter of looking at what goes on in D.C., which looks like a very muted response, and it is from the Republicans in D.C. So I hold out hope that there is a response. But I mentioned in the book that the Wilson basically enacted the 17th Amendment, where he made senators elected by popular vote, and they became more beholden to D.C. than being representatives of their state that were voted in by their state legislature at the time, or that were appointed by their state legislature at the time. And it was a big deal when it happened. And he really did take us to a point where we got very disconnected from our government and became more D.C.-centric. And now what you're seeing, Rick, is what happens in D.C., and you're saying, well, geez, where's the reaction, because they're supposed to represent us and stuff like that. And we have a changing demographic that might not, react in the way that you think is common sense, because you have people migrating from socialist countries that have listened to that kind of siren song of socialism their whole lives, and they kind of look at us as being socialist light, so they don't have what you might consider would be a typical common sense American response to things. And unfortunately, the combination of all those things is what you're seeing, or in your case, not seeing.
No, I guess I can see the point there, because, and you're right, a lot of it may be the fact that maybe people aren't reacting the way that I hope they would react. But I guess my biggest question with all of this still remains, how is it that we could have, back to this current thing that everybody's been talking about, the Syrian refugees. We have an entire group in D.C. that wants these people here, regardless of how we feel about it. And we as the American people just seem to be sitting back and saying, well, I guess we're going to get some refugees. And I guess I don't really understand where the breakdown is coming from. And I know I keep coming back to that, but it's just me still trying to wrap my head around the idea that, again, we seem to view common sense as something that is not relevant anymore. Because, and it goes back to something that I said last night that somebody else pointed out a much better way. When I was talking about the tainted M&Ms, it would be akin, some of these arguments about, well, it's only 20% of these people that want to hurt us and this, that, and the other. Well, most of the time when they do the product recalls, it's only usually about 10 or 15% of whatever product batch that's actually been tainted. So why would we need to recall the whole batch if all we have to do is worry about 10 or 15% of, let's say, some bad chicken? There's some chicken in a certain processing plant that may have been tainted with E. coli. They've only found one sample of it, yet they basically recall all of it that they can think possibly might have been contaminated by it. Why is that? It's common sense. It's safety, because it's much better to bring it all back in and instead of exposing somebody to something that might actually kill them. So why is our political system so much different than that? I don't understand it, because there are a vast number of these people that legitimately want to kill us. They have been raised their entire lives to believe that we are evil, and they want us dead, gone, and wiped off the map. And why is that okay?
Well, it goes way back, Rick. In my mind, and I do lay this out in commoner sense, the progressive movement pre- and post-Civil War, as the seeds were planted, and then it came along in the early part of the 20th century, is an ideology which is a kind of a religion. It's all about ideology, and at that point, common sense, any kind of practical thought is thrown out the window. That's what Obama practices, that's what the progressive practice, and that's what a lot of the people in D.C. practice. And like I said, the spin-off sect of the religion of liberalism is political correctness, which is, in my mind, the first step towards, enlisting in a death cult for a culture, politically and socially. With that said, that's why you're not seeing the common sense applied. It's only about ideology and political power. Common sense doesn't enter into it. It's just about the guilt trip that they trade in and trying to maintain power. And I'm not sure why they're like that, but I think that maybe it isn't only Obama that is a little bit touched, let's say.
Well, no, I mean, at this point, it's the same thing that I've pointed out on a lot of shows, not every single one that I've done, but at this point, if you really want to look at the political parties, I've gotten to the point where I really can't see much of a difference anymore. They all basically kind of want the same things, just for different reasons. Much like the immigration argument. The Democrats want it for votes, the Republicans want it for cheap labor. And that's basically what it comes down to. They want the same things, but they want them for different reasons. Each time power shifts in D.C., the only thing that really changes is where the money's going and which groups are benefited by whichever side is currently in power. The issue that we have there, though, is that no matter which way it goes, the same folks are usually somewhere involved or embedded in whichever groups are receiving the money. And it's like you pointed out, not only in your book, but on tonight's show, that, it's all about the lobbyists, because that's really where the focus is anymore. It's not even necessarily the politicians that are wielding the power anymore, because they've basically become walking meat suits for the lobbyists.
Well, reforming the tax code could go a long way to turning the money changers' tables over at the temple, so to speak. So I hope that we do get significant tax reform.
Yeah, I actually, one of the things that I would really, really love to see is basically kind of a fair tax type system, where basically you are taxed based on the amount you spend, whether you are a corporation or a person. And, and we could still find ways to make that fair. If you are below a certain income level and you can validate that you're working legitimately and below a certain income level, we could give you a card that you swipe that makes you tax exempt. So not only that, could we help the people that are less fortunate by making them exempt from the taxes? For the folks that can't validate their income and where it's coming from, we can still, like for the panhandlers that are going around the corner and hopping into a Lexus, we can start making sure that they're actually paying taxes too. So it would fix so many problems. But again, it all goes back to the fact that there's no such thing as common sense in D.C. anymore. Just saying.
Well, when you have 73,000 pages in the tax code, obviously that's structured to benefit lobbyists and politicians. That's not structured to benefit the average working person. He can't take advantage of that. It only hurts him, and that's why the law. I'm really glad that it's been a topic of conversation to possibly reform it. There's a lot of good plans out there. Just as long as we do reform it somehow, take a step in that direction, it would be great for the economy and great for the average American working person. I really hope that it happens. It's a big deal.
You are right. That it is. All right, so at this point, we are actually already starting to wind down to the end of the show. I know, yet again, nearly another hour already in the books. And every time I have you on, Patrick, I look at the clock and start thinking, where did the time go? But before we run out of time, I want to do what I always do in case we have folks that are tuning in and hearing you for the first time. Remind them of who you are, what it is that you do, and where they can interact with you should they choose to do so.
Well, the title of the book is Commoner Sense, The Working Person's Guide to America. You can get it on Amazon very easily as an ebook or get a paperback sent to you quite quickly. You can follow me on Twitter at FernariSense or on Facebook. Facebook, you'll find a lot of links to interviews and also to articles that I do that you can access at MagicCityNews.com. They've got about 15 articles of mine that they've published from this year that are up to date, and the topics are all about current politics. And if you go to Facebook, you'll see the links to several of them, and you can find all of them at that site.
All right. Well, I, of course, am Rick Robinson, host of America Off the Rails. Just in case somebody's tuning in for the first time, you can interact with me in the following ways. You can follow me on Twitter at @double_R_OKC. You can find me on Facebook on my professional page at www.facebook.com/RadioRicky You can shoot me an email in one of two places, Ricky@thesparkradionetwork.com or Rick@K98talk.com. And, of course, at some point, when we get all the kinks worked out, you'll be able to reach me on a call-in number, but so far my network will not really handle the extra strain, so we're not able to do that for the moment. All right, so I want to give a big thank you again to Mr. Patrick Furnari for joining me today on WNJC. For those of you who may be listening for the first time, just want to give you a quick rundown of all the other places where this particular show can be heard. I can be heard 5 nights a week on my home network, K98 Talk, and the network, or home channel, K98 Talk, and the network that I've built, the Spark Radio Network, every Monday through Friday, typically at 11 Eastern, 10 Central. We can also be heard every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on SHR Media at 11 Eastern in the morning. We can be heard every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on AMFM247.com, which is a streaming network, as well as 8 low-power AM/FM stations throughout the country. 1 Eastern every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then, of course, we have High Point Radio out of Montauk, New Jersey, that this show can be heard every evening on. And then our Red State Talk Radio affiliate runs us every Sunday at 6 Central. I'm sorry, 6 Eastern, 5 Central. Do apologize. And that's it as far as I can think of for the moment for the live broadcast or the streams. Now, if you're looking for a podcast version of the show, it can be heard in multiple places as well. We have affiliates available through Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn when the show is live, of course, and then also FM Player and iHeartRadio, just to name a few. Also, we do have a SoundCloud channel available through the Spark Radio Network that actually will have an archived version of every single show that runs on that particular station. Now again, for those of you who are listening for the first time, I do want to remind you that one of the things that I always try to do on this show, and will continue to do until either my internet connection is taken away or until I can no longer breathe, is remind you that there is still time to save this great country that we call America, this wonderful nation that we all call home. But in order to do that, we have to put down the remote, get off the couch, and find a way to get involved. Now, you heard me open the show with a little bit of a spoof on the recent Mizzou incident with the safe zones, but I have to tell you, I don't care if you disagree with me philosophically or politically, even 99.99999% of the time. As long as you're finding a way to get involved and make a difference, that's what needs to happen in this country. It's not so much about political ideology anymore as it is about trying to find a way to make a difference, become involved, and stay engaged. We've lost track of that at some point along the way, and we need to remember that we are what drives the engine that is this country, and we are what can help it make a difference. But we have to stay focused. We have to stay involved. We have to stay engaged. And that's why I come to you every week here on WNJC 1360 AM and throughout the other multitude of places this show is starting to be heard on a regular basis. And it's why on my home channel, K98 Talk, I bring you so many different people from different perspectives, whether it's conservative, liberal, or libertarian, because I want you to make up your own mind as to what it's going to take to save this particular country. Because we are, unfortunately, running out of time. My particular understanding and belief of what it is going to take to change this country may not necessarily align with yours. But the truth is often in the middle. And I'm reminded of something that my co-host on Finding Common Ground reminded me of this week, actually this past weekend. During the recent debate, we actually talked about it on Saturday's show. He's finding himself becoming more of a critical thinker because of his involvement on Finding Common Ground. He doesn't necessarily cling to everything involving liberalism anymore and realizes that the truth is sometimes often in the middle. Now, I am a firm believer that conservatism works every single time that it's tried, and with as far left as this country has gone, it can't hurt us to go somewhat back to the right, but I would be happy if we were somewhere in the middle, because I know that in some instances the genie can't get put back in the bottle when it comes to things like abortion. I just want it to be safe, rare, and legal as Roe v. Wade intended, and I don't want common sense to go out the window when it comes to things like immigration and these refugees that are basically being shoved down our throats sideways at this point. I just want us to use critical thinking skills and common sense. I understand that, to quote my grandfather, and even, I believe, one of my grandmothers, common sense is not necessarily a flower that grows in everyone's garden. But there are enough of us with it left that we should be able to understand that just because something feels good doesn't mean we necessarily ought to do it. And all I'm going to say in closing, when it comes to the refugee situation, before I bid you good day, is we lock our doors at night and we lock our cars when we park them because we want to keep the things inside of our homes, including our possessions, the people that may be in them, and sometimes even the things that are in our cars, safe, and keep the car safe and in working order, and we want to keep the people inside our home safe. All I'm asking is that we use that same common sense mentality when it comes to the borders of our country. Paris, and more specifically the country of France, have seen exactly what happens when you don't have control of your borders. And even they, in reaction, are starting to shut their borders down. So again, in closing, I ask this one last question, and then I promise you can go on about your daily lives. Isn't it about time that we allow common sense to become the driving force in America again? We could help so many more of these supposed refugees if we could relocate them to somewhere that is geographically more centered to where they already are, because it's going to take us less money, which means we could help more people. But the left doesn't want you to think about that, and they don't want you to realize that there are ways that we could help them without bringing them here. And this is what concerns me, because when you have a group like ISIS basically telling us, if you take in these refugees, we will find a way to infiltrate those ranks, and we will destroy you. And we're refusing to listen to them. So in closing today, folks, I just want to say one last time, thank you to everyone who tunes in on a regular basis to America Off the Rails, whether it is here on WNJC 1360 AM or any of the other affiliates. There are so many other choices and options that you have available now, whether it's live, stream, or podcast, that I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you that tune in, because I know that you don't have to, but that you choose to. And it makes me happy every single day to see the folks that tune in and the responses that I get to this show and the content that we bring you here. So again, WNJC, until I see you next week, this is Rick Robinson. I'm the host of America Off the Rails, and I'll be back with you when I see you. God bless. Take care. Be safe. Have a great day.
Breaking your backs, we're gonna redistribute when we make our pay tax. Hey, sit back down.
Screw you guys. I'm going home. Later.
Game over, man. It's game over.